I think it's important to talk about how hard it is to live in a body or a mind that constantly gets things wrong. So, hear me out. If you live with chronic pain, if you have any kind of neurodivergence from autism to ADHD to OCD to bipolar disorder to any of the diagnoses that fall under the neurodivergent spectrum, the world in which we live constantly tells us that what we're thinking is wrong. Chronic pain, we often hear we are catastrophizing. This is the clinical research term that people use when they're trying to understand the experiences of people with chronic pain. Catastrophizing is, basically making a catastrophe out of something that isn't actually that bad. This is hard to live with, this language constantly, because the fact of the matter is the pain feels the way it feels. Like it feels and is debilitating on our worst days and just constantly there and annoying on our best days. There's no faking that. Like you're not faking what you're feeling. And actually I was very disappointed to attend a CEU that for the people who are not therapists or medical professionals, a CEU is a continuing unit of education. And we have to go through continuing education hours each year in order to maintain our clinical licenses. I attended a CEU on factitious disorder. Factitious disorder is basically it, it goes along the lines of hypochondriac, somatic symptom disorder, malingering, all of these what have become really nasty terms because it is now equated with somebody lying about their health in order to gain something, attention, money, whatever it is. And so it's not that these people don't exist. Of course, there are people out there who truly don't have anything wrong, but they see a cash grab. If you've watched Apple Cider Vinegar, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And they learn that like leaning into a medical diagnosis, even if they don't have it, really gets them either their emotional or financial needs taken care of. I am not saying that this doesn't happen. I just don't know a single person in my entire life that this has ever been the case for. And I work entirely with people with chronic pain and chronic illness. And I've never once worked with somebody in my hundreds of clients and people in my own life, even people who I grew up thinking were hypochondriacs because as a kid, that's what I was told. I now know that there was truly something wrong with them. It's just the medical system didn't have the answers that that person needed. This leads us into the blow up of Make America Healthy Again and the wellness movement. Now, I was in this movement 10 years ago. It wasn't called that at the time. I had no idea it was a movement. I decided to go to a college down here in Georgia. I moved from Connecticut to Georgia because I just wanted to get away from where I grew up. I looked for a school that had an accredited dietetics program, ended up at Life University, and that just so happens to be a chiropractic college. So I basically was smack dab in the middle of holistic wellness culture, and I really truly believed things like our government was trying to poison us with red number 40 in all of our foods and MSG and what were some of the other big ones at the time? It was seed oils and I mean everything that's blowing up now in the wellness industry. That was my life 10 years ago and I really thought that basically I kind of had moved on from that bubble. I went to grad school. I learned I'm not a research scholar by any means, but I learned a little bit more about how to actually read scientific papers and how to look for bias and how to also look for replicated studies in order to prove or disprove a hypothesis. And I think that's the biggest problem with the wellness scene right now. And again, 10 years ago when I was in it, basically, if it said, if the study was funded by anything that, you know, was connected to Big Pharma or say McDonald's, they do some research stuff, then that meant the entire study should be thrown out the window. And it's just not true. Yes, that is a pretty big conflict of interest, but let me just say, like, if you voted for Donald Trump because of RFK Jr. and you are hoping that they're going to get rid of corruption, um, based on like removing conflicts of interest. I guess I don't really understand how that's the case when Elon Musk is in charge of Doge and his companies were being audited by the government. And there are so many conflicts of interests there with the government and his contracts. Um, Same thing with RFK Jr. He has a lot of conflict of interest based on his previous work experience. And again, I just don't know how you can say that this is any better. So I digress because I think that that's really important. But my point back to people who are faking it versus not faking it, the media is always going to grasp onto sensationalizing things because that's what's going to sell. And so while I cannot say what the motivation was of the people putting on this continuing education unit about malingering and factitious disorder, I can't speak to their motivation, but to me, what it felt like sitting there was, let's go ahead and talk about this disorder because it was a residential mental health facility putting on the CEU. So of course they want to basically promote their company and say, hey, this is a disorder that we work with, so you can send your clients here when they need help with this disorder. But the problem is they didn't once speak to the rate, like how many people this is occurring in the country. And so it made it look like basically all of us with chronic health conditions that have not gotten answers from doctors and have been searching for answers for 5, 6, 7 years. It makes us look like we are the ones they're talking about. And you have to know that that is not true. Because when your therapist or your medical doctor is looking at you saying, your labs are normal, nothing's wrong, I don't know why you're in pain, we can't give you pain medication, blah, 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 and you start to feel like maybe it's in my head, maybe I'm crazy, please know all of these things are true. 1, you're not crazy. You are feeling the pain that you're feeling. 2, our medical system does not have any way of giving you an exact answer for your pain because pain is a subjective experience. It is both real and subjective. You feel what you're feeling, but 2 people can have the exact same condition and feel entirely different pain in entirely different areas of their body. And the wellness industry, think chiropractic, massage, functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, therapy even, it offers guidance. It offers the social piece that is incredibly important in the biopsychosocial model of healing. And so when you live in a body that constantly gets told, we don't have answers for you, or your pain can't really be that bad, or your brain says over and over and over again, because you have something like OCD that tells you the same thing on repeat over and over and over again, that you're right about this thing or you're wrong about that thing. And the people around you are like, what world do you live in? Like, this is not the reality that we live in, in our world, like in someone who doesn't have OCD or really any neurodivergence, it's really easy for them to kind of hear something one time and then just be like, oh, okay, and like move on with their day. A lot of times neurodivergent people need to have a lot of extra reassurance. And so 1, the world often isn't set up to reassure us over and over and over again. 2, the world is, and not only are they not set up to reassure us of the things we want to be reassured about, they are often also telling us the opposite. And that can be really confusing in your brain because it constantly makes you question your reality. This is why medical gaslighting has become such a term. Some people really hate it because they feel like it's not the real meaning of gaslighting, which was very vindictive. And I don't think most medical doctors are being vindictive, but the problem is it still feels like our reality is being questioned over and over and over again. And that was what gaslighting was. It was somebody who was vindictive in making you question your reality, and it was very on purpose. The only thing that's changed now is it's no longer quite on purpose by the individual sitting in front of you, but it wouldn't be totally wild for you to make the assumption that our system is set up to make you question whether you're right or wrong, especially given that insurances don't want to pay for anything. So of course, like they send denial letters. They tell you that they don't care what your doctor's recommendation was. This is what they will or won't pay for. All sorts of things. So it's a very systemic problem, and it is not your fault. I think I started this rant off by trying to give a lot of like compassion to those who struggle with feeling like they're wrong all the time. This can actually make it really, really hard for you to change your thought process, to change what your emotional patterns, to become more emotionally regulated, to regulate your nervous system, to do all of these kind of health and wellness things. It can be really, really hard when it feels like your reality is constantly questioned. So I would love to hear what your experiences are on this. And I've also created a journaling prompt worksheet for you. You can find the link for that in the show notes.